Hello. Oh, my light on, haven't I? Okay, hierarchy, nature, and Christianity. Now, that's what I'm talking about this morning. What I've noticed is there's this sort of contradiction between the vast majority of people that call themselves Christians in terms of, uh, we're all equal in the eyes of God. We're all created equal in the eyes of God. And then there's this like blatant contradiction where all throughout society there are all these hierarchies and pecking orders, as if we just, we can't deal with that aspect of Christianity. We can't seem to view ourselves as equal. I mean, I'm not very good at it. I tend to look at most people like they're insects, So I'm not doing a very good job of being a Christian myself, but nor do I see other people doing a very good job of it either, and even when they try to, it tends to backfire, Even if you talk to people that seem to be on the lowest levels of society, it's almost like they won't do anything to sort of equalize their position. And of course, the same with like people in higher positions. They're not going to give up their money and power just to become more equal. It's too desirable. And for some reason, it's the same with other people. There are a lot of people, it seems, who are determined to remain poor. So they're not very good Christians either. The only really good Christians are the middle classes, I'm not middle class, by the way. I mean, I might have been born from children that were born kind of more or less middle class, but they were poor by the time they had me, so they had no middle class standing at all. So I'm kind of born working class. Though I've kind of got some middle class genes, although I've also got a lot of Neanderthal genes as well. So, I can argue that if you really want. I don't want to argue it. I'm just saying. Anyway. So, oh dear. There's some of the things that I think about in terms of this, right? I trace it back to the Book of Kings. It's probably not a very good. I don't actually believe in the Bible. I think it's probably was only printed a few hundred years ago. First of all, maybe as much as 700 or 800 years ago, 900 years ago. But before that, I think it was just that's when it was probably printed. It was like first written. Then I don't believe any of it was written much before 1,000 years ago. It's just too obvious. It's too obviously fake. There's so many fake things in there about. I mean, right at the beginning. Although I made a video about this, I think yesterday. There is no beginning. But all the patriarchs mentioned in Genesis, who lived to 900 years. It's just not very believable, is it? I think what it is, there's probably people who have lived. I mean, according to people like Socrates, who's one of my heroes, right? So according to people like Socrates, one of the priests in Egypt lived for over 1,000 years. So knocking it down a couple of hundred years to 900 years, it's like, oh yeah, we had all these people who you didn't hear about them because they lived to only 900 years. They didn't live to quite 1,000 years, like the priests of Egypt, and so I think a lot of people are going to sort of believe it. But in the background of their subconscious, they've already heard of people living just over 1,000 years. So it's not easy to it's easy to swallow the idea that a whole series of people lived for 900 years, and before that you hadn't heard of them because they didn't live past 1,000, and to live past 1,000 was like that was something worth mentioning. But they still lived to nearly 1,000, you know. And I think it's really interesting that none of them lived to quite 1,000. They all lived to about 900 and something years. You know, 10 of them in a row, or 8 or 9 of them or something. You know, with one exception, Enoch, who God took him. You know. Nah, I don't believe it. It's just too cleverly written. You know, it's too clever. That's why I don't believe it. It's too clever, and it's just not very plausible. You know, why would all these people, you know, one after the other, live for 900 years? Almost, you know, just almost exactly 900 years. You know, a little bit longer. You know, no, it just doesn't wash. It doesn't ring true. Plus, it's supposed to have been written after the flood, when all this stuff. And Moses wrote it, and he wasn't even brought up as a Jew. How the fuck does he know this stuff? You know, how the fuck would he know? I mean, it's obviously what they call inspired knowledge. You know, it's not true. It's inspired instead. You know, it's inspired by God. You know. So you're not supposed to question it. You're supposed to just read it, think that it's true, but it's obviously not true, because the guy had no access to any of the records or any knowledge about any of these things. I mean, it's such obviously a big con. When I think about it, it's obviously a total con. I mean, nowadays, if people come up with this stuff now, and try to sort of pass it off as the truth, no one would believe them. You know, it would be obvious that they're totally just talking out their arse. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? If you've got a brain, you'll realise it's pretty obvious, you know. Right. Just excuse me a moment while I make a cigarette. So anyway, what I've heard about equality and, you know, stuff, hierarchies, is that people in the last century decided to really push this idea of inequality. Try and make as much different levels of wealth and well-being and success as possible. You know, and create many different hierarchies and levels of hierarchy. You know, and why they've done this, I don't really know. But you know, you could look at it in terms of just creating variety, an opportunity. There could be lots of good reasons for it. You know, one of the things about doing the work is I'm trying to look at things in terms of what different possibilities are, what different you know, ways of living. I mean, if we were all equal in terms of money and status, it'd probably kind of get boring. You know, people would get bored with it. You know. When there's loads of different levels of hierarchy and status in the world, what it means is that there's always something to aim for. You know, there's always someone better off than you, but there's always someone worse off than you. And that can, you know, people can feel happy about that. And also it reflects nature. That's the thing that like kind of annoys me a little bit. It reflects nature. I think that's why a lot of people, they are going to accept this thing, even though it's like they like to call themselves Christians, or they've been brought up as Christians. They would rather accept a system that feels more natural, you know, even if we're not all equal. You know, we're all unequal. That's what feels natural, because in a pack of animals, say like a pack of wolves, there's a hierarchy, there's a pecking order, and pretty much with all animals, you've got pecking orders. The strongest, you know, survival of the fittest, that the strongest get the best food. Everyone else, you know, they have to follow the pecking order. But this is exactly the opposite of Christianity. Christianity demands that there is no pecking order. It demands that we're all equal. But show me a Christian who is going to do that, or a group of Christians who is going to do that. I'm sure there are some, you know, at least on the surface it would appear that way. But generally, most people in the Christian world are adamant about sticking with their different hierarchies that they've got. They're not good Christians at all. I like YouTube at the moment because it's like, and for a few years, you know, because it's you know, anyone can make a video in theory. If you've got the technology and the time and stuff, you can make a video. I don't even really want my videos to do that well. I feel a bit intimidated by more than about 6 viewers. It's like, well, being in a room with 6 people and you're talking all the time, it just makes you feel uncomfortable. So just having 2 or 3 video viewers is enough for me. I suppose it would be nice for me to stay on longer on these videos, so I can get a proper conversation going. And I probably should tell people when I'm going to do a conversation about something, instead of just always just doing them spontaneously, which is what I like to do. Of course, people can always leave comments in the comment section after the video is finished. Yeah, so in the Bible, in the book of Kings, God said to whoever it was, David or Samuel, whoever it was, he said, look, I don't want people to have kings, because a king is setting himself up in opposition to me, i.e. God, not me, but God. That's what he said, you know. So he didn't really want kings. Then later on in the Bible, you've got the book of Ecclesiastes, which seems to be, although it's not very easy to find real confirmation of this fact, but it seems to be that it's Solomon talking after he was condemned as like apostate. You know, he built a few temples for some female goddesses, or some goddesses, you know. I imagine they were female if they were goddesses. So he built a few temples for some goddesses, and then God decided to hate him forevermore, you know. But after that, he wrote Ecclesiastes. That's how Ecclesiastes comes across. He says he's the son of David. That's Solomon, the son of David. He says he was the richest, most wisest king. That also is Solomon. So how can it not be Solomon? So we're talking about the wisest king, probably, who ever lived, at least in the Hebrew tradition. Some of the other interesting things I thought that Solomon said in Ecclesiastes was in chapter 2, verse 19 to 21, I think. And he says something like, there is a man whose labour is in wisdom and knowledge and equity. This also is a great evil, a great vanity. This also is vanity and a great evil. That's what it says in the King James Version. A good reason to reject the written word, and it's one of the reasons I reject the written word. There's other episodes in the Bible, you know, there's the tree of knowledge. It's obviously symbolic literacy. Snakes don't talk to people. So when the snake spoke to Eve, currently my understanding of that is it was her amygdala, her lizard brain, or rather her lizard brain. You know, that's the snake. It's the lizard brain in your brain stem. It's the rooted, the most rooted part of your brain. You know, it's the most animal part of your brain. It's the serpent part. You know, a lizard without legs is a serpent, and it's the lizard brain. It's got no legs. It's the serpent part of your brain, the reptile part, the reptile brain. It's obviously that part of her brain was speaking to her, saying, yes, the written word is a good thing. You will be able to teach your children much wisdom from the written word, and they will become wise beyond their years, and they will see like the gods see. That's what it really means. It's pretty obvious if you think about it. But who thinks about these things? It's much easier to just look at it literally and think, oh, a snake spoke to this woman. You know, as if snakes could ever speak. But of course, 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, snakes could speak okay then, you know. It was normal for snakes to speak. But nowadays, they just stopped speaking, you know. Evolution has gone by so much for snakes in the last few thousand years, which is, in evolutionary terms, less than the blink of an eye. That all of a sudden, nowadays, snakes can't speak anymore. You know, they've just got fed up with humans. They don't speak to us anymore. They've gotten a bit moody, you see. They're generally all in a bad mood, so they keep their mouths shut. But they used to be able to speak to us all the time, you know. So if you're looking in terms of like symbolic literacy, a tree of knowledge is a library. It's not a tree with apples on that when you eat the apples, you suddenly become wise and know everything, you know, like and see like the gods see. Well, at least that's how I interpret it, you know. Who knows? I could be wrong. It's one of the reasons I think that the written word is a silly idea, is because too many people are too stupid to understand that it's written in symbolic literacy. You know, when the people say snake, they don't mean an actual snake. They either mean a shaman or the lizard brain or, you know, a devil, you know. But anything except an actual snake. A snake is just the symbol. You know, it's the word that they use. They didn't have words in those days for all different kinds of things. They could have meant the hypocrite, but they didn't have the word hypocrite until after Hippocrates, you see, which came thousands of years later. Before the written word, people had concrete languages. Everybody knew all the words. Now, if you look in a dictionary, you haven't got to look very far until you find words that you've never heard before. Especially if you get a good dictionary, a good, like, modern dictionary, there's almost certainly going to be thousands of words that almost everybody has never even heard before, have no idea they existed. That's what English does. That's how English works. It's a written word language with loads and loads of words that nobody understands. I think it's a stupid language, you know. most people only use about 200 words in their whole life, maybe 400 at best. That's what the majority of people only use. And in an English dictionary, there's like 50,000, maybe 100, maybe 200,000 words. 200,000, like 1,000 times more than most people even ever use in their lifetime. Why are they not using all those words? What sort of people are they? Are they like just insects? What do we do? I'll tell you what, right? These people do with their written word and their large vocabularies. They intimidate stupid people. They make them feel stupid, even more stupid than they are. I really don't like the written word. The written word is like it's corrupt. It's evil. It can't ever be understood. It's demonic. That's what it is. It's demonic. It's a demonic like form of communication. I'm pretty much 100% sure. It's another reason why there's no equality. We can't ever be equal when we have the written word and almost nobody can understand it. It takes a lifetime to even make a little bit of progress in it. So why not have a language which is concrete and we can all understand it, and just get rid of the written word? It'd make a lot more sense. One of the things that I think that it stays like it is because the government and the laws, the system of law, the lawyers, they like to use all these complicated words to deceive people and steal their land off of them and their money. Use these little contracts and stuff to deceive people and just steal from them. That's what they do. They're all con artists. The whole system is based on like a protection racket. The government is a protection racket. The medical establishment's a protection racket. The water authorities are a protection racket. It's all a protection racket. They're just like the mafia. They're no different. It's just the mafia has taken over the government and everything else. So it's all a protection racket. Anyway, it seems like most people actually prefer it like this. Most people actually quite like having people, quite like being in slavery and having kings. Right, this is something interesting. The reason I think that God told Samuel or whoever he didn't want to have kings, because kings would be a direct opposition to God, is because what he really wanted was for people to think for themselves. Okay, that's what God wants. He wants us to be like him. We're made in the image of God. We're made in the image and likeness of God. So because we've got large brains, the implication is we're supposed to think for ourselves. So having a king or a prime minister or a president, or just politicians or leaders, you're basically trying to get other people to do the thinking for you. You can't be bothered to think for yourself. You want someone else to do the thinking for you. Now, God is saying, no, you got to do the thinking for yourself. We're all created equal. You all have to do the thinking, right? But most people are like, they find thinking difficult. It's hard work. So they would rather just get one person to do all the thinking for, I don't know, 5 or 10 million, 100 million, 300 million people, or in China, maybe just a small group of people to do the thinking for, you know, 1 billion people. So that all these people don't have to think for themselves, and they can let someone else just tell them what to do. And God says, no, you have to think for yourselves. You all have to think for yourselves. That's why I've given you large brains, you know, so you can think for yourself. But people being naturally lazy and sinners and being born like animals, you know, we want a hierarchy. It's our instincts tell us, no, we want a hierarchy. We want someone big and important to do all the thinking for us, so they can just tell us what to do. And where does that get us? Well, we're in a man-made mass extinction event. That's where it gets us. You know, we're polluting the world, we're destroying it, and we're making it uninhabitable. That's where not thinking for ourselves gets us, right? It's great, isn't it? That's where we're getting. So all these people that are like won't think for themselves, in the next probably 100 or so years, most of them are going to be wiped out. They're going to go like down the plug hole. And they will only have themselves to blame, or their ancestors or whatever, you know. The thing is, right, about thinking for yourself, it might seem difficult, but one of the things you can observe when you do the thinking and you start looking around, you open your eyes like this, like that, and you open your ears like, you know, I haven't got very big ears. When you open your ears, right, and your eyes, you can see that there's lots of people around who aren't very intelligent. They haven't got high IQs. There are people around who've got IQs like 80 or 90 or even less, 75, 80, and they still have good lives. They still enjoy their life. They're productive. Not all of them, but quite a lot of them, you know. They're productive. They work. They're nice people to be around. You can talk to them. But there are also people who have got high IQs that are really depressed and are not productive and are not working, you know, people like me. Okay, I might not seem very depressed, but I do get in bad moods from time to time, you know, for not very much reason, you know, and I do get stressed out from time to time. Probably a lot more than most people with much less IQs than me, you know. So having a good life is not important in terms of having a high IQ. It's not like the higher IQ you have, the better life you have. It doesn't work like that at all. You know, it's basically no correlation between IQ and having a good life and an enjoyable, fulfilling life. It's got nothing to do with intelligence, or at least, you know, academic intelligence anyway. Anyone can notice that. You don't have to be told by someone like me or the government or anything. I expect the government don't talk about that sort of thing much. But I can tell you that it's like, that's the truth. That's I don't have to tell you it's the truth. You just have to look. You can see there is plenty of people with low IQs that are having a great life. You don't need a big IQ to have a good life. Also, having an IQ doesn't make it easier to have a good life. You know, if anything, it probably makes it more difficult, more of a challenge. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons I'm trying to get to this point where I'm talking about the work in terms of how it can be good for everyone, including stupid people. Or at least people with low IQs, because having a low IQ doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you're academically stupid. And being academically intelligent, you can still be much more stupid than most stupid people, you know. You just have to try and understand what I'm saying. It's like, I don't really know what words to use. I'm using the English language. The English language is like just all floppy, you know. It's very hard to use. It's like poetry. Okay. Hello, viewer, by the way. Thanks for the thumb up. I'm just thinking of like ending the video because I think I've talked about everything I wanted to say. I'm aware of these videos going on a long time. I don't want people to have to watch loads and loads of stuff when I haven't got much to say. I basically said it all now. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Tell everyone how great my videos are, that they're the best videos on YouTube by far. And if they don't watch them, I might come around their house and let their tires down or something like that if they don't watch my videos. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.